With mounting pressures from the church and increased trade with Northbury, Bara Town finds itself under increasing pressure to please visitors and traders alike. But rather than see this as a problem that I need to deal with, as Lord of Bara, I am going to seize it as an opportunity. And so, on this day, I am going to commission the building of a Hospitium. So I welcome you to join me, Lord Bara, as I undertake this project in another episode of Foundation. What I'm doing here is I'm stealing parts from the monastery monument. You may or may not be aware, but over the other side of Bara Hill, in the little settlement of Newchurch, is where the monastery is built, and I don't want to build a separate monastery, mainly because of the way that the mechanics work. If I built a separate monastery and then only built Hospitium parts, the visitors that use that Hospitium wouldn't interact with the rest of the other monastery functions. So they wouldn't use the monastery kitchen, for example, or the cloister, because it's in a totally separate monastery. They're not associated with each other. It's something to bear in mind when you're building multiple monuments. And the way that I get around that is what you see I'm doing here. I don't know what this activity is called, but it's kind of like creeping or leapfrogging the parts to where I want them to be. It's kind of a little hack, but it doesn't really break the game mechanics. Right, now that I've got the correct monument part that I want over here, question is, where do I want it to go? From this angle, you can see that it's actually pretty crowded now, the area of Bara Town, and it's worth contemplating an expansion at this point, but I still think there's space to fit quite a few things in. But bearing in mind that the Hospitium is going to be a fairly substantial build, I need it to have an area that can support that. Around the back of the church here would be okay, but this smaller one, I think I'll save that for an additional tailor. Also, right next to the church would be pretty good because it's also a clergy monument. Then there's this little area next to the manor, but I think that's also a bit too small. In fact, it is too small. I don't really like that. So this puts me in a tricky situation because although I could put it behind the church, I feel like I also want the Hospitium to stand out. Because of its function, it's not something that should be hidden away. And don't forget that the church itself is always a dominating factor in a medieval period. So there's no need for it to be a shy piece. It can stand above everything else. So what I think I'll do is I'll eat into my forestry area over here. That won't have a negative impact on the amount of boar that I'm able to gather, because that forest area is actually really very large. It's more than enough. As you can see, I think I've got 4 hunters in there, and there's still plenty of boar icons around, so they're not getting through all of that. So if I just get rid of the rest of these areas that I marked out temporarily, and if I say that I chop into there a little bit, and then I can start planning out what the Hospitium is eventually going to look like. Oh yeah, I also need to remove some of these trees, all of these trees in fact. So I'll just mark that out, and that can go on. I'll hit play again, and that can go on while I just plan the Hospitium out here. Here's a hot tip: when you are building too far away from the original monument that you've stolen pieces from, always make sure that you place a part down next to the building parts that you're playing with, and leave it there until you finish your build. Otherwise, you'll get stuck in a situation where you've got all these pieces, you planned them out, you move one, and then suddenly you're too far away and you have to delete everything and start again. Which is what that bit random building just sitting at the side there is for. It's so I can build freely. So what I'm looking for here is to try to integrate the Hospitium somewhat into the manor house. I imagine that visitors or traders would come to the manor house. They may enter the manor house and then be escorted to the Hospitium via a passage that connects them. That's my thinking. And I'm kind of making an internal courtyard for it as well, so that it can be a place of a respite for the weary traveller. Yeah, I like that. I like the tower on the end. I'm just going to put these bracings down to make it look like it's actually stable and won't just fall down in a strong wind. So what's happening in my mind is visitors are coming to the manor house. They're entering the manor house and being greeted into Bara Town, and then they're being escorted down the corridor there that connects to the Hospitium. There's a large banquet hall where they can relax, maybe get something to eat, and then there's also this other adjoining corridor which leads to the tower there, and then that can be a place where they'll be able to get a good view of Bara Town. Anyway, happy with that, so let's just hit go and watch a little time lapse, shall we? Anyhow, I must dash, and if you have been, thank you for listening, thank you for watching. This has been Foundation. Please leave a like, and I have been Lord Bara.